Hey guys, it's Ryan here with HobbiesofaMan once again, and today we're doing another light novel review. I think this might be the second one that I do this year, or maybe the third one. I can't quite remember, but it's been a while since I did one, and that's because even though I like collecting light novels, I end up not reading them all that too often, especially in the last couple months or year or so, because I've been really into basically the American equivalent, which is lit RPG type novels, right? But the other day, as I was moving and I was just kind of fed up with everything, in the morning I decided to read a light novel kind of randomly while we were getting ready for our 4th of July like trip to the movies, and I ended up reading this novel. It's called You Like Me, Not My Daughter. This is one that I've seen around for a long time. I picked it up a while ago, a few years ago at this point, and it's one that's not available physically. It's only available digitally through J Novel Club, but 7 Seas publishes the manga adaptation. The author here is Kota Nozumi, and the artist for this, who does a great job, is Gyunyu, and it's published by J Novel Club, like I think I mentioned. It's an adult novel, in my opinion. All of the characters, except for one of them, are adults. There's a character that's a high schooler. She's the daughter character. There's the mom character who's in her 30s. I think she's exactly 30. And then there's our main character, Taku, who's 20, and his friend Satoya, who's also 20 because they're college students, right? Their genres are obviously slice of life and romance. There's some drama elements here, but it's not as dramatic as you would think for what the concept is, right? And it does have an adaptation. Like I said, it has a manga. It does not have an anime, although I think that this would be a great anime. It's just not quite maybe popular enough to deserve it, I guess, so it doesn't have one. My rating for this is a 4.5 out of 5. I think it's nearly perfect. I really enjoyed myself, but there's one or two small issues that I have with it. One is that it's too short. I think that this is a bit too episodic for my taste. I mean, light novels usually are, but the whole novel feels like it took me about an hour and a half to read max, and it basically feels like 2 or 3 episodes of a soap opera, whereas I wish it was more like half a season of a soap opera. I feel like it needs a bit more. And the fact is that it takes a long time to really get going, and then it kind of also feels like maybe it goes too quickly in some ways. And so it's kind of weird because it feels like it takes too long, and then it also is too fast at the same time. So those are kind of my issues there. I think the pacing is a bit odd. The premise here is that there's this young 20-something-year-old guy called Taku who's in love with his 30-year-old neighbor. And I say 20-something because it's kind of unclear. I think he's exactly supposed to be 20, but it's not really, like, nothing is exactly given to you as, like, this is the age of every character, right? And it doesn't really work out that much. You know, he could be 20, he could be 22, he could be 25, and his neighbor is just supposed to be, like, half his age older than him, right? She's supposed to be 10 years older than him. So it can be really whatever age range you want, as long as it's older than 18, right? And it works out pretty well. And throughout the situations that happen in the novel, we learn why he likes her, we learn how deep his interest in her is, and we also learn that he is ready to try to conquer her, right? To become her lover and her partner. And it's just time to get at it. So that's kind of the premise here. In terms of plot line, it's a pretty simple plot. It's well done. It's translated well. It's written in a nice, honest, and easy to understand way. And it just kind of goes through the story pretty simply. So it opens up with a prologue here. It opens up with a memory that Taku has explaining to us how Yako kind of crashed into his life, surprisingly. He was at the funeral of his neighbor's for his neighbor's parents. The daughter character, her name is Miu, or Mui, I think it's Miu. And her parents died in a car accident as they were picking her up from school. She is, there crying, sad. And Taku, as a silly child, kind of ends up listening in on conversations he shouldn't have. And the conversation is mostly Miu's extended family members not knowing or fighting over who's going to take care of her. They don't want the responsibility. This seems like a very kind of standard Japanese thing. There's a lot of novels and manga that talk about the idea that a lot of characters kind of just end up without parents, mostly because it's, parents are the death of adventure, but also because I think that's just kind of how the culture is. And Ayako shows up, and she realizes that she's alone, and she knows that Miu is alone too, and so she yells to the world, I will take care of her. And this impacts Taku a lot, right? And he kind of falls in love with her in that moment, but also later on. And this is kind of the prologue here. At the beginning of the actual novel, it opens up with Ayako kind of waking up. It's just a very slice of life kind of story here. She wakes up, she makes food, she talks about the fact that, being a single mother is hard, but she also finds it very rewarding. And her young daughter is kind of ridiculous, so she's kind of in a difficult age, and it's kind of understandable. And her daughter shows up, she's like eepy or sleepy, and she's lost in the sauce basically. And she makes food for her. They have breakfast together. Taku shows up, who constantly comes by, in Yako's mind to hang out with Miu because he likes her, and in actuality to try to interact with Ayako because he loves her. And he escorts Miu to school, but before they do that, we see a bit of tension here where Taku really wants to be recognized as a grown man by Ayako, and she doesn't really pick up on that. And so there's a bit of moment of tension here where Taku is like, please don't call me by my childhood name. I promise I'm a grown man. Please don't call me that, right? And so they leave, right? Later, we learn that Ayako works as a light novel editor in some ways, and she kind of has a friendly boss who's a woman as well, whose name is Yumemi, and she kind of happens to be Ayako's female companion character, her mentor character, but also someone that is kind of like a dark future potential for Ayako. So Ayako respects this woman as a professional, but she thinks that her life as an individual is kind of silly and not the right thing to do. Ayako also realizes that she has given up on her potential happiness and chosen to be happy with her daughter instead, right? This feels a bit sexist, in my opinion, a bit. Just because she has a child and she's a single mother does not mean that she is banned from pursuing romantic happiness, right? It's just harder. And Ayako, I don't know if the creator is male or female, no. So it's kind of unclear if this is like a internalized issue through Japanese culture from a female perspective, or if this is like a male character or a male creator writing this because this is what he thinks of women, right? But Ayako doesn't really see it that way. She's like, I gave up on a standard life in order to take care of Miu, and I'm happy with that. There's nothing else to talk about, right? It's just, it is what it is, right? And so we learned a lot about Ayako in this moment. The next chapter starts at night, I think, with Taku and Miu showing up after school to have a little feast for his birthday at Ayako's house. She brings out a bottle of wine to celebrate Taku's 21st birthday, I guess, or 20th maybe. I can't remember. It's kind of unclear what birthday it is, and maybe it is clear and I just forgot. That's also possible. But they drink wine together. They get a bit tipsy, and Ayako, kind of playing the older, like silly cougar type character, teases Taku about his interest in girls, right? And she, asks him, there has to be a girl that you like, and he's like, yes, but it's kind of unlikely that she'll respond to my interest, right? And Ayako's like, no, you got to tell her. You got to be honest with her, right? And so he drinks a little bit more liquid courage, and he explains to her, Miss Ayako, I like you, right? Like, you are the person that I am in love with. And she's shocked. And of course, she actually says the name of the title, or the name of the book in this moment. She's like, oh, you like me, not my daughter? And there's this really silly image of her, kind of just like, oh, like, what the fuck? And I thought it was cute. I liked it. I thought it was a good way to bring it up. This kind of feels like the end of the first episode, in a sense. Then we move on. It messes with Ayako's brain for a bit to realize that she is the subject of Takun's unrequited love. And she kind of oversleeps for a few days. She kind of fades in and out of reality. She kind of disassociates for a few days. She just doesn't know what to think. And on one hand, she realizes, oh, Takun is a grown man. And, kind of my interactions with him kind of changed now that I realize that. And on the other hand, she doesn't want to admit that he is a grown man because she still thinks of him as like a child, right? And she doesn't want to admit that he's a man because then that would have to mean that she has to deal with his feelings, right? And we see this kind of really silly situation where she just kind of goes around and round in circles trying to figure out what she thinks about him, and kind of mostly just kind of running away from it, right? At the same time, we see Taku hanging out at school with his friend Satoya, who tells him to just suck it up. This is what happens when you tell people your feelings. You make them uncomfortable, you make yourself uncomfortable, but if you wait it out, then you push through, you might actually get the results you want out of it, right? Understandable. It's not really great advice, but it's also just kind of what it is, right? You have to deal with the consequences of your actions. And in this case, if your action is to confess you unrequited love, you have to deal with the fact that they might disagree with you. They might not want to love you back, or they might say yes, but it's going to take them a while, especially in this situation where he's like a young, character, and he's trying to go with a cougar character, right? So it's understandable. It's kind of funny, but it works out. I think that the characterization here is good. As this kind of happens, Miu, the daughter character, talks to Ayako, and she's like, I support you, Mom. Like, this guy is good. I don't mind him. He's a good person. I wouldn't mind calling him dad. If you want to date him, if you want to marry him, go for it, right? And Ayako just doesn't get it. She's like, no, that's crazy. It doesn't make any sense. It's not common sense for us to get into each other's lives. We should not do this, right? Later, for whatever reason, Miu is out of the house. Taku comes by, and Ayako, kind of not thinking about it, opens the door after she just showered, and so she's in her towel. And this is kind of like a silly, like, it's supposed to be kind of fan-servicey moment, although there's no image associated with it, so it doesn't really end up being that much of a fan service kind of moment. But it's good. I enjoyed it. I think it's funny, and it also kind of leads to the characters realizing more about their feelings for each other, right? He tells her he loved her since childhood when she took a shower with him one time when they were kids. And he tells her, his love for her is real. He cares about her, and he cares about her so much that he's already got his parents on board with the idea. And later, a different day, Ayako meets with Taku's mom, kind of accidentally. They have a serious conversation. They kind of talk about it again. And Ayako is told by Taku's mom, like, yeah, Taku loves you. You are the reason why he is the good, upstanding man that he is now, because he wanted to impress you. Please take him seriously. Please do what you need to do. If you don't like him, say that. And if you do like him, please be with him, because he has done everything in his power to be appealing to you, right? And so this is too much for Ayako. She doesn't really want to deal with it, but she comes up with a few different plans in order to try to get Taku to feel the ick, to just kind of realize that she's not the right person for him. And well, they don't really work out that much. It's kind of funny. Throughout the whole thing, we really see her kind of trying these weird things, and none of them working, because one, Taku knows her pretty intimately since he's grown up around her, and two, when she does something that might actually freak someone out, it doesn't work on Taku, because of course he's a bit of an otaku himself, especially when Miss Ayako dresses in a cosplay for like the fake version of Pretty Cure that they're talking about in this novel. And it turns out that he also likes it, and he enjoys going to different events for it, and Ayako does too, and she doesn't take Miu anymore because she doesn't like it anymore, but now she wants to go with him. And so they kind of agree to a date accidentally without her realizing it, but no one really calls it out, right? Eventually, Miu gets really fed up. She's like, Mom, you're being a coward. Just fucking date him already. He's a good guy. He's a good person. Just go for it. Like, stop thinking about it, right? And Yumemi, the older boss lady, also tells her the same thing. She's like, you're bragging to me about this guy, and you think it's a problem, but in reality, he's the right person. He works for you. Like, please don't squander this opportunity, right? And eventually, this kind of goes in circles for a little bit longer, and finally, Miu tells her mom that Taku has moved on, that he, realizes that she's not gonna, take his feelings into account. He just moved on, and he has a new girlfriend, right? And this sparks a bit of jealousy in Ayako, and she goes to the movies where she knows that Taku is, and she kind of stalks him for a little bit. Eventually, Taku finds her. Turns out that he's not dating someone. He's actually just hanging out with his buddy Satoya, who likes to cross-dress. And this allows for Taku and Ayako to really understand each other properly. And Ayako finally is like, okay, I guess I do like you. Let's just take this slow, because I'm not ready for the actual, relationship aspect. So let's just kind of work through this as I realize my feelings for you, right? And he allows it. And then in order to kind of have an epilogue for the book, it ends with Taku asking her out on a date. he's allowing her to go slow, but he wants to go on a date with her, like a proper date. And so this kind of freaks out Ayako, and this is where the book ends, right? There's a bit of stuff that I didn't really mention that might be a bit suspicious here and there that I guess I'll talk about really quickly. So one of the chapters in the book kind of delves deeper into the reason why Takun really loves Ayako. And it's partially like she was the object of his affections when he became a teenage boy and he went through puberty. And so it's kind of like, in some aspects you could kind of see it as a very bad thing, right? And you can even say that it's kind of like a Shota kind of like thing, like the male version of lolicon, right? Like a Shota-con thing. At the same time, it's not really portrayed that way in my opinion. There's definitely some weird aspects to it, and partially that's because Japanese culture is different from American culture. It's partially because the creator probably is into Shota-con or lolicon or like mommy type stuff in some way or fashion. And, it does kind of end up being a little bit weird, but it's not that bad. I think that broadly speaking, it's not a big problem. But there are scenes where there's like a little boy character and a grown woman kind of in the bath together. And those scenes are depicted in the artwork. So, if you're someone that's kind of squeamish about that stuff, maybe don't read this. But otherwise, it's a pretty good story. I did enjoy it. I think the plot is good. And it does have a very great, low stakes sitcom, kind of like romantic soap opera kind of vibe to it that I like a lot. In terms of characters, we have Taku, who is a very conscientious, good guy. He's a very studious character. He swims and he does all of this stuff because he wants to impress Ayako, but also because he's a good guy, right? We have Ayako, who's a wonderful, courageous woman who decided to take on her niece as her daughter, and she's grown with her, and she's a very diligent worker and mother figure, and really lovely lady. I really love this character a lot. There's Miu, who's just kind of like a bratty teenage character, and then Yumemi, who's like the older lady who's kind of like a bit too free with her love, so much so that she kind of gets in trouble with it. She dates too many people at the same time. She's kind of like what Ayako thinks she's going to be by dating Taku, but she would not be because that's not the type of person she is. And so Ayako and Yumemi kind of are two different kind of cougar characters, right? So Ayako's a like girl next door type character, and Yumemi is kind of the the slutty older lady, if that makes sense. And so Ayako is afraid of turning into Yumemi, and I think that kind of is why Ayako is the way she is in this story, right? And then we have Satoya, who's just Taku's friend, and I assume that this eventually will turn into the friend that ends up with Miu, because I'm sure that the romance element evolves beyond just Taku and Miu. Taku and Ayako. I'm sure that all of the other characters are going to have their own love, interest and love triangle things going on, because it feels like it's that sort of series, right? In terms of world building, there's none, because there's not any needed. This is basically just like a generic Japanese neighborhood, normal, going to school, going through life, working, very basic, real life-esque stuff, right? In terms of artwork and fan service, there's great artwork. There's some, cougarific kind of elements here. Some of the ways that things are drawn are very, very pretty, very enjoyable to look at. But like I said, there is some Shota-kun images here and there that might be a bit sus. I didn't really care too much for them personally. I don't like them, but I don't also find them to be that bad either. It's like, whatever, who cares? It's not, out of all of the weird stuff that happens in manga and anime, it's probably the least weird, right? So it's not too bad in my opinion, but it might be something that you're particularly put off by, so be aware of that going forward. Ratings-wise, 4.5 out of 5, like I said. It's a bit, short for my taste. I think that it happens a bit too quickly as well. So the story moves very linearly, very well, but the book is short. Like, there's not that many pages. It was a very easy read. And within that easiness, there's this feeling of weird pacing to an extent, right? On one hand, it feels like the story is moving at a fast clip, like it's getting through stuff quickly. On the other, Ayako's reluctance to be interested in Taku is both dealt with very slowly and very quickly at the same time. And I'm not really sure what causes that feeling in me. It's just kind of how it feels. Like, if she was going to hold out for so long, I feel like it would have been more like the climax of the second book, whereas him confessing to her would have been the climax of this first book, right? But because they had the confession and then they had her accepting her feelings all in the same book, and the book is so short, it feels like it just happens really, really fast, even though the vast majority of the book is Ayako being like, no, I can't like you. It doesn't make sense, you know, this sort of stuff. And so it's too short and yet oddly paced, and I just wish it was a bit longer. So 4.5 out of 5 for me. That's kind of all my thoughts here on You Like Me, Not My Daughter by Kota Nozumi, right? So let me know if you've read this below. You know, did you like it? Do you enjoy it? Let me know that in the comments. And thank you guys very much for watching. See you guys later.